the capitalist system works by always making more profit, always producing more, always expanding more. Even a 0% inflation, which is like it's considered a bad thing, a market stagnation. So there's all of these ideas that are baked into capitalism that really force it to have endless growth in a finite universe. You can't keep selling gas. At one point, you're going to run out. You can't keep making, copper.
Unless you make it sustainable.
You're going to have to be able to recycle the limited amount you have. What the world is really looking at is expanding
Not when you
beyond.
switch to a whole new market that's going to require more gas usage in order to produce the energy that you need.
But you don't understand. You're throwing a curveball that's not
Right,
a
yeah,
good
yeah.
argument to the problem, because the problems are going to be there. It doesn't matter what you burn to create the energy. Whatever you're burning is finite. And in a huge scale, even the sun is finite. Even any star in the universe has a limited lifespan. Of course, that for us, it's like infinity, because we're not going to live 4 billion years, probably as a species, definitely not like how we live today.
Should we make sacrifices for a generation that's going to come 1,000 years from now? What are we preserving exactly? Or are we preserving a world that if we don't do so, it's going to end in 12 years? You know what I'm saying?
Not really.
Is that the reality, though? Well, like what people say, oh, if we don't do something right now, the ice caps are going to melt and the world's going to end in 12 years.
Well, the world is never going to end. The only way the world as we know it.
Why are we making sacrifices, though?
The world as we know it is only going to end by
why
one
do
of
we have
two.
to find systems that will amenizar,
mitigate
the environmental crisis, let's say?
That's not a hard question to answer. Right now, there's probably only two ways that life on Earth would change.
I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Sure, let's do it. I love it. Two ways that the world would change forever in unforeseeable circumstances. It's either like a natural cataclysm, like an explosion of a super volcano, or a comet hits the planet Earth and throws us into.
But that's happened in the past. It could happen anytime.
Wait, let me explain. Until the end.
Ice ages. Or...
let me explain until the end. One second. So, or we destroy ourselves. We go into nuclear war and we make the whole planet uninhabitable for a couple of centuries, because everything will die off the radiation, everything except cockroaches and a few radioactive resistant animals. So we're not saying that the world is going to end. It's going to end for us, or it's going to end for a lot of the biodiversity. That's really what we care about. There's been, in the history of the planet Earth, who's been around for around 4.6 billion years, and who the life on planet Earth has been along for a lot less. There's been accounted, more or less, according to the fossil records, around 6 massive extinctions, which puts a massive extinction, by definition, I can pull it up, but let me quote off the top of my brain, is an extinction event that takes time. It's not like a snap of a fingers and everything dies, but where 95% of the biodiversity, around a huge amount of the biodiversity, disappears. The 5%, the 10%, the 15% that remain, they will repopulate. Life will find a way, to quote Jurassic Park, right?
Life always finds a way.
That's not a problem. The problem is that the reality of today would be very much changed. Imagine if something happens and all the bees die. There's an environmental catastrophe, like there's a chemical in the air that starts killing the bees. And you think, so what? Bees. And the bees are the biggest pollinizers on Earth. So the bees will affect this very intricate and very well fine-tuned and balanced that exists in nature, that is a circle, is a cycle. Mm-hmm. And everything is sort of like dependent, because then you have the plants that don't pollinate, cross-pollinate, and then you might have a disease in the plant, and the plant might not be able to have the genetic diversity to survive, and then the plant might die off, and that might be the food source for something else, and then something else might be the food for something else, and that can change the panorama, the biological panorama, and create a cascade effect. Will that erase all life on Earth? No. You're always gonna at the worst level, you're always gonna have bacteria, and life can like eventually take
Evolve
it
from there.
from there again. As long as there's life, there's a chance of evolution.
Right.
But for us, what matters to us, what matters to me is what happens in the next 30 years, 20 years, 40 years, right? And if we are actively creating a situation where in the geological scale, it's like we lit up a cigarette in our planet and it just filled the whole atmosphere, because in 100 years, we burned through enough energy that was equivalent to hundreds of thousands, or if not millions of years of energy that got stored in these, in this biological material. Because you know where crude comes from, right?
What comes from
Crude oil, like the actual oil that we pump. They're usually a lot of the trees and their forests, and they're like it's flora that got that's got their energy from the sun. They did it photosynthesis, and wood was created and whatnot. And then these things get eventually trapped, get sedimented, and they get trapped in the soil or whatever. And eventually they become these big pools of decomposed organic matter. That's why we call it carbon fuel, carbon fossil, because they're very old. This energy that it came from the sun. The energy that's stored in fossil fuel was once a tree, was once biomatter that sort of decomposed. So in a way, all the energy on Earth, except for geological energy that comes from the ground, because the Earth is still very hot and very liquid, it's so hot that the stone gets liquefied, comes from the sun. And the sun gets harnessed by this biology of trees and everything that uses photons in a way to trigger the reactions in their own cells. And we're taking up all this condensed energy that took millions of years to accumulate, because it was layer upon layer upon layer that died and got, I forget exactly the process to make these, but please, in the internet, correct me.
It's decomposed matter that turns into petrol.
Yeah, to in a nutshell. So, and you're taking all this energy and you're burning it up in 150 years, 200 years. Right.
So we're
this is
burning up our ancestors?
You're burning up your tree ancestors and your biomatter ancestors, and we're talking about a lot of energy that gets released all at once, and that's really what's happening. So it's going to create this huge immediate effect, and if everything will eventually iron itself out, as it has in the past. But the consequences are not going to be cataclysmic unless you think that losing a lot of biodiversity, losing land, because submerging islands, getting like coastlines to change, changing the nature of the salinity in the oceans, which will then affect the currents, which will eventually affect the weather, and things will start shifting around in a very, very geological, extremely small time scale. Is this going to be a problem? Well, humans are going to persevere. That's not going to be the end of the world. But if you value life, and if you value all life forms, and if you value this natural equilibrium that happens, and that we've lived and we've seen before, we can say that like, oh, we're actually throwing a little bit of a bowling ball in these pins, and we're going to shake these things up. Everything will eventually balance themselves out, but in a human scale, it might take many generations. I don't know.
We have to play the part. We have to play the role of the curator. We have to take care of what initially was given to us.
Great.
Right?
But take the superior...
The natural resources that were given to us by nature, by God. Whatever you might believe in.
All the copper that God gives.
We do have a curator-like role to play, and it's our job to instate that equilibrium, that balance.
Well, it's our job to not disrupt
but I think it would
be, to begin with.
It would be a little bit of a stretch to say that, because I feel like if we believe that the world, planet Earth, is a living being, right?
Well,
it's alive, right? We understand the the planet
The
Earth.
metaphor. The metaphor between
Yeah,
it by saying,
is alive because it moves. It moves by itself. That are
what do you mean it moves by itself?
the let. Well, I mean, what is nature? It's part of the planet Earth,
Yeah,
right?
but
And it's
Mars moves
it,
by itself and it has no
yeah, but it
living.
has a life of its own.
But what do
It's
you mean?
alive. It's alive. The world is alive. Earth is alive, right?
Well, Earth as a big rock floating through space has life on it. Yeah.
Has life on it. But how did that life came to be?
Like I said in other
What's that source that
episodes.
creates life on Earth? It's because it's
Well, it's a planet that lives in a cool distance from cool, like I mean like cool, bro, from the sun, that allows it to have water that's not frozen nor evaporated, that has like a lot of elements that.
right. That there's an energy of its own that is fluctuating and it's working. That there's an order inside Earth that where things happen in a certain order for life to be able to
Yes.
exist.
Okay, I'll give you that. I understand what you're trying to say. It's not the most scientific way of putting it forward, but yes,
Yeah, but
let's go with that.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm not gonna say things in a scientifical way. But the idea is that planet Earth
Yes,
is something that is
it
alive.
harbors life.
Okay, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
But it has certain systems that were here before us, let's say,
before.
and
Yes.
right, rivers, oceans,
Yeah, it has water. It has liquid water. It's the most one of the most important
jungles,
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
and, flora, fauna, flora. How do you say that?
yeah, fauna and flora.
Yeah.
My brother, my friend's fauna. Have you met fauna and flora?
Anyways, nature in general, it has a life of its own. It's there. It's alive. The world is alive,
Yes.
and I think it's a bit of a stretch for us to think that, let's say, if we were actually living in a way where the Earth felt that we were taking too much and not giving it back, I think it would just shake us off somehow, because it has a life of its own, and it wouldn't allow a organism to live on it that is not actually living in balance with itself. I don't know if you
I'm gonna
understand my point.
okay. I'm gonna indulge your point. How long would that imbalance have to go before you get shaken off?
I don't know. It would probably create. It would create. Um, what's the word? I don't know. Something would happen, like like a natural catastrophe.
What do you mean a natural catastrophe?
I don't
What
know.
does that have to do with anything?
The Earth would give us a sign
What are you talking about?
that we are not doing
What is this,
things.
Final Fantasy Advent Children and like, oh, Gaia, and then when you shoot the ground, the spirits will punish you? No, that's not how life on Earth works.
It would be something. Something would happen that we would be able to observe.
What you are observing, it's just a very small. Do you know, like, for example, different animals perceive time in different rates. Like a fly is very fast to the human eye, but for the fly, the whole world is very slow. You know, that's why the fly kind of makes these
I
like
guess my
really fast
point.
adjustments.
I guess my
To our time scale, it might seem like nothing is happening, but we might be in this larger cataclysmic situation. And that thing that you say that the quote unquote Earth is should give us, Earth is might actually be giving us already. It's just too much of a slow motion for our time scale to understand. Does that make sense?
It does.
So
It makes sense.
it's
But
not it's not
I
like
think
we're not saying, oh,
it defeats
give
the
us
purpose,
give me
though.
Earth, give me a sign. Earth might be giving you the sign when you have the polar ice caps melting and like these little, and the temperature and the ocean temperature going up a degree, or the air temperature, average world temperature going up a degree. We might be being pushed into this other type of climate that will have its own consequences. But it's just happens across a year, across 2 years, across 5 years, and that takes too long for you to understand the pattern. the current, every time we, and I don't want to quote the news as the source, but it's undeniable that storms have become in the last few years. I keep hearing hottest temperature on record, strongest or the most number of storms in a given storm season, this, that, and the other. So it might be an anomaly. It might be just a temporary thing. Oh, this year happened to be like a very strong storm season, or you happen to have too many forest fires, and then it goes down. It's kind of like a data point that's away from all the others. But the trend, when you make the statistical analysis, shows like things going into a very concrete direction. That to me is a sign. Hello everybody, and thank you for watching until the end. This has been Woke Wars, and I hope you liked our conversation. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about next. Also, check out some of our other episodes. We post every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see you on the next one.